Hi, everyone. It's a pleasure talking with you again today. The elections had occurred. The people of the United States have spoken. The 74 million, close to 75 million who voted for Trump are happy. The 70 million plus, close to 71 million who voted for Kamala Harris are in disbelief. However, this is the greatest democracy on this planet. Life goes on. We wake up, we go to work, our lives continue. I would say we have to remain faithful. We have to remain hopeful because Donald Trump is everybody's president. We cannot rely on anybody else but our collective voice. And presence and visibility, we have to be vigilant as well. While we know that Mr. Trump, the 47th president, is everybody's president. Whether you voted for him or not, we have to be aware that this is democracy. We just have to be involved. I always say that regardless of who you vote for, you have to be engaged. However, as a teacher, as an educator, I would like to say that whether it's a Republican or Democratic president, I feel I haven't been heard for the past 40 years as far as education is concerned. Our black students are still not doing that well. We will have to go into details in another program. I just want to give my perspective, my vision, and my hope during the next 4 years. I know a lot of us were expecting, those of us I voted for VP Harris. She didn't get elected. I have to go forward. I have to say, in the past 40 years, I have not been heard in the K 12 education, which is my main concern and which is my field of studies. I'm worried about our K 12 students. I'm worried that the African proverb is not being applied. The African proverb, it takes a village to raise a child, needs more active participants. We need to know how our community leaders, our community stakeholders are helping families and parents involved in the educational process. My propositions regarding education, especially educating the immigrants, have never been heard. I first wrote my first letter during the winter break of 1984, and I submitted it in 1985. I still have not heard anything 40 years later. In 1995, I joined a church group, a parish committee, which I sat in there for almost 20 years. I brought the idea of having after school programs in the church hall. Still have not been heard. I've been in Yahoo groups, AOL groups, listservs since 1994. And since 2001, I started writing in mainstream newspapers. The Boston Globe had published my letters to the editors, to his various editors between 2001 and 2006 for every year, 5 consecutive years. And I write for local papers. So I've been writing for local papers in English since 2001. So as I'm saying all this to mention that regardless of the presidents who are elected in the past 15, 20 years, even 40 years, well, I say 15, 20 years because Since I wasn't a citizen, I don't know if my voice mattered prior to become a citizen, but everybody's voice matters as long as you live in the states. Every voice should matter. So when it comes to education, our community, especially our Black community, has a long way to go. Despite of the individual successes we've seen in the past 25 to 30 years, I think our first elected official, especially in Boston, was elected in 92. In Florida in the 90s. So for the past 30 years, we've seen a lot of Haitians being elected. As a matter of fact, we had two Haitians in the governor's council. Two Haitian women were elected in the governor's council. One, Elise, she used to live down the street from me as a child. So I know her, and Tamisha Civil, I used to run into her when I worked as an interpreter in the courthouses. So I know those candidates, I know those were elected. So most of them. So when you're a certain age, some of them you know when they were born. So as the newly elected officials are really real are taking are planning, are preparing for their post in January, I would like to propose that more comprehensive educational outreach to underserved or at risk communities occur. In other words, I would want outreach, I would propose that outreach to underserved groups come on top of their list, wherever they are, whether it's the president, state reps, so we don't have municipal elections, but the municipalities will see my presentation today. Uh, in terms of education, many parents and community leaders come from countries or cultures that respect or trust government, school administration, elected officials, or someone with a fancy title, be cognizant of their problems, see their problems, and solve their issues. But in many cases, that doesn't happen. In this country, the leadership, I noticed that it took me my entire life. I used to come from uh, uh, grassroots. Okay, from the top, you have to bring their issues to them. So don't expect them to solve your problems. Don't expect that. That's what we need to do, more educational training in the community, or more civic training, more history of the United States. So you often hear that so and so doesn't do anything for me, so and so doesn't do anything for us. So people stay home, they don't go out to vote, they don't go to municipal meetings. Some of them don't go to cultural activities. So expecting that whoever is in power or whoever is in position of authority will solve your problems. That will not occur. So what I will advise, no candidate, no elected officials to make the studies of history, U.S. history, civics. So we don't do that much civics anymore. So civic is not part of the, now MCAS has been eliminated, but civic is not part of, it's not being enforced in the curriculum. So we need more civic education, so people will know they have to keep their streets clean, start from your neighborhood. So we have to be involved uh, in municipal meetings, in municipal issues, the studies of history, cross-cultural education, what is appropriate in this country, what is not appropriate in our country. We have a lot to do in terms of informing those from other cultures, especially my culture, the Black culture. So I was at a meeting and saying that, you know, I go to other, I don't know if I should mention names, like the Asian cultures, they will have seminars or workshops, cross-cultural workshops, I would say, like East-West encounters. So what is done in the East and done in the West. So, in other words, how you should behave in various cultures. So they do that. But from my studies, from the Great Migration, from former slaves or blacks moving, slave descendants moving from the South to the coast, they have not done that cross-cultural training from my reading. So we have not seen cross-cultural training. So people just come to work. You see, they come to work in Chicago, in Boston, uh, uh, but not really learning the culture. So we maybe, we speak different languages, but I think Black people, we have some cultural aspects that are common to all Blacks. So we are from an oral culture. So we have to read the materials. So we have to take, these 15 minutes programs that I've done. It's taken me 3 days to really to read and finalize what I'm going to say. So I don't just come. That's why I don't think I can do weekly programs because I have to work, I have to pay my bills. So I don't do. I cannot. I wanted to do some shows at least once a week, but it's gonna be challenging for me to do. And one last thing I like to do, I wanted to say I made some observations during the when I went to vote. Like I think I've said it. Some people I've seen things. Some people expected to see two names, but they only saw six names. Six. I read them in the last show I did. Uh, there are people like just basics, minor things like they drop them. Somebody gave them a ride and then they didn't wait for them. So they just couldn't vote. They were in a. I had to tell to a person, please wait for her. It's not gonna take that long. So it took me like 7 minutes. So I know what to do. I've read so much literature, so I know what I was gonna vote, I was gonna vote for. And there was a lady. It seemed that she brought her mother, so both of them couldn't fill out the ballot. So I was there. I saw them when I came. They were there when I left. To tell you, I had to come back because I walked out with the pen that I used in the ballot box. I walked out with it, so I came back. They were still there. So I finally asked the poll worker, "Can I help them?" So I went and tried to help them. So they were like within like the 10, 15, 20 minutes. I was there. I said maybe 20 because I left and came back because to return the pen. So they were still there. So we have to educate people, about voting. What are the processes? What do you do? Like as I was saying, like we can have workshops where people read the sample ballots so they know what to expect. So the ballots, it was a lot to read. But if you know like the first two sentences, what are the questions about? So you can prepare how you are going to vote. And as a black person, I would like to read Dr. Mary McLeod Bethune's words or will before she left. I think she wrote that in 1955. She wrote 9 points, or I think they call them 9 axioms. I would like to live with those as blacks, as black immigrants, and I think this pertains to what she said. What Mary McLeod Bethune wrote pertains is still relevant. It pertains to all of us now. Okay, she wrote, "I leave you love. I leave you to hope. I leave you the challenge of developing confidence in one another. I leave you a thirst for education." And I'm adding, I leave you a thirst for learning. Yes, I know my culture, we believe in education, but practicing lifelong learning is a challenge. So not only education, but we have to be involved. Being educated, go to school, get a degree, and then get a job doesn't make us. Those aspects, I would say, don't make us full engaging citizens. So we have to be lifelong learners. Mary McLeod Bethune wrote, "I leave you faith. I leave you racial dignity. I leave you a desire to live in harmony with your fellow men." And she were fellow men, but I'm saying I leave you the desire to live in harmony with your fellow men and women. I leave you responsibility to our young people. There are two aspects, two of those points that I like. I leave you a thirst for education. I think I did mention that. Yeah, we have to have a thirst, not only education, but a thirst for learning. I leave you hope. I leave you the challenge of developing confidence in one another. This is something I started to notice like in the 90s, 1994, 95. So I didn't know that in 1955. Mary, Dr. Bethune wrote about having trust in one another, having confidence in one another. So if we don't trust one another, how are we going to move forward? How are we going to build communities? So we have to go beyond jobs. So we have to trust one another. What I say is that the same skills that you employ in your work, in your job, so let's employ them. Let's use them in the community, because what I'm seeing is that we have college graduates who are driving Uber. We have those girls who are doing call who are working in call centers with a college degree. I know this girl. She's a double major and she's working as a CNA. It's like we have a brain drain in the community because we're not trusting one another to start our jobs, to start creating jobs, to start creating employment for one another. So I want to reflect. I would like us to reflect to reflect on Dr. Mary McLeod Bethune's word. She was an African American educator and philanthropist. Even though I'm Haitian, but I do read from others. I do read W.E.B. Du Bois. I do read African Americans because I'm seeing the whole dialogue, which is not helping the race, that the whole adults and uh, African descendant of slaves, African Americans descendant of slaves, or Black descendant of slaves. But I think we tend to separate ourselves as human, but we are more separated than ever, and that's not going to help us, regardless who's the president. Being separated, not having confidence in one another, is not going to help us. So I leave you with love. I will leave you with hope, and I will leave this uh, program with the challenge to develop trust in one another. All right. Thank you. See you next time. Bye.